What's up, guys? It's three-time NFL Pro Bowler, all-decade return specialist, Josh Cribbs. I want to welcome you to the College Sports Connection podcast, where Double A, Alex, and AJ host the Mid-American Conference best.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the College Sports Connection podcast. I'm your host, Alex the Captain. Joining me, as always, it's AJ the Guru.
What's going on, everybody?
AJ, welcome back. We took part of the summer off to kind of detox a little bit from the end of the sports year to kind of collect our thoughts, to kind of figure out what we're going to do. And now we're just 2 weeks away from the Mid-American Conference Football Media Day, and football's right around the corner.
Really is. It's hard to believe we're at that time of year already. We're already halfway through July here, so it's about the 12th today. But yeah, you mentioned we took a little break. We do that every summer. It's kind of nice. And you and I, our lives have been busy traveling, and we had weddings and get-togethers, and so we've been kind of traveling all over the place here. So it's nice to take a few weeks off, enjoy the time, enjoy the heat that we've gotten here in the Midwest. But yeah, we have football media day here in Cleveland. It is in Cleveland this year, which is kind of different. It's usually in Detroit and Ford Field, but being in Cleveland does make a little more sense, being that's where the office is. Sure. And also, being the MAC kind of rented out the entire Ford Field when they did this. I mean, we only used a small portion of the stadium when we were there last year. So yeah, this year it is at the House of Blues on 4th Street in downtown. That's gonna be a lot of fun. It's an area I'm very familiar with. There, you're very familiar with. Heck, I mean, by that time we'd be there just about a year ago for my bachelor party around the same time.
Yeah, sounds about right. That was a good time itself.
Yeah, I think that was like the 25th or something like that, or around that time. So yeah, we were down there around this time last year, just for different reasons. But nevertheless, we're excited about that. We've got a great lineup. We've got a great, plan of action here, going in, meeting with coaches and some players, some coaches we've never had before, some programs we've never had before. We're gonna probably have our normals on. We'll have Coach Tom Hammock from NIU. We'll probably have him on because he's a great staple on our show. Coach Lester will probably have, because he was a great interview with us, and it'd be nice to talk to him in person. Then we'll kind of, those are our two guarantees right now, but we'll talk to Coach New, I'm sure. We'll talk to Candle, I'm sure, because for our sake anyway. Sure. But we want to talk to Coach Creighton from Easter, and we want to talk to Sean
Lewis from Kent, Scott Leffler from Bowling Green.
Yeah, I would love to get the new Akron coach, Moorhead. He'd be a blast to talk with. He'll be a hot commodity. And this year it's going to be interesting too, because last year we mentioned being in Michigan, both Western, Central, and Eastern were fairly hard to get a hold of because all of their local media was there. And so we talked to Coach McElwain for a little bit, but that wasn't towards the end of the day because everybody wanted to talk to him, being a Michigan program. All the local news stations were around him, and Coach Lester at the time. I didn't know the connection that we had with him at that time, but they had just changed their logo at that point, so he was busy talking to them. And then Coach Creighton had just gotten a contract extension, so people wanted to talk to him about that as well. Yep. But nevertheless, we've had a better plan this year because we know what we're doing. Last year we went in there just kind of blind, and we made it work. And so
and it worked well.
It worked pretty well. It worked to our advantage. We had a fun day, and I believe my wife is going to be with us again this year, or with us for the first time this year at Media Day. So she'll be taking some cool pictures and whatnot. We'll be posting those on our social media and our website, our newly revamped website with our updated list of guests that we've had. We haven't had one in a while. So we've just been busy with life and whatnot. But yeah, we've updated our list at cscpodcast.com. Make sure you check that out. Got some cool pictures of our guests and then little descriptions of what programs they were with when we talked to them, because we have a few coaches who are not with the program anymore that they were when we spoke to them last time. So we've updated that as well. We've added some pictures from the MAC basketball championship that we were at in December. Those are on there. Quick Lanes Bowl games on there. What else do we have?
The NIU Spring
Showcase. NIU Spring Showcase, which was a lot of fun. What else is on there? You went to a lacrosse game at Central Michigan. And that's another topic we got to get into also. Speaking of guests who aren't at programs that they were when we spoke to them last, Coach Sarah Tisdale, she left Mount Pleasant to go to Ypsilanti to take over the Eagles, the Women Eagle lacrosse program. So excited for her about that.
This is their first year of being a program too. So, yes. I mean, you look at her history as a coach, she has been nothing but build. I mean, she talked about her playing career at Central Michigan when they were just a club sport. And then she went to D3 Augustina or
Mm-hmm.
Augusta or whatever it was, and then comes back to Central to coach the now varsity program. And
Yeah.
this is Eastern's first year as a varsity program. So she's got, her win-loss record as a career coach doesn't look great, but what she's done at every stop is she's created gold.
Yeah,
And
she's
so I'm
won everywhere
excited to
she
see
went.
what she does at Eastern.
Took them to the tournament this year, which was a lot of fun to watch them. You got to see them live against who they play? Butler?
That No, they played Northwestern.
They played North, oh, who they play when you saw them?
Oh, that when I saw them, they played Detroit.
Detroit Mercy. That's right,
Mhm.
Detroit Mercy.
And that helped set that actually gave her 100th career
Her win, yeah.
victory. So
She got that pretty quickly too, because she is fairly young in the game.
Yep.
That's one thing too we've kind of realized here. The past few coaches we've had on, Becky Burke, she's extremely young at Buffalo. Anna Bears, the cross country and track coach at Akron, extremely young. So I think the tide's turning to younger coaches, a little more enthusiastic. Those three coaches that we've talked to are all 35 and younger probably.
I would say, yeah.
So,
Well, Coach Burke, 32.
yeah.
Tisdale of the group is probably the oldest.
The oldest, yeah.
And she's maybe mid 30s.
Yeah. So.
Anna Bears is mid 20s.
Like mid to late 20s, yeah. She's just a couple years younger than me. But yeah, it's exciting time for not only sports coaching, especially at the women's level, because we're seeing a lot of great coaches coming into the women's level to amp that up.
Mhm.
I think nothing but great things for Becky Burke and Bears. And now Tisdale, where you have to get her back on the show now and get some green from Eastern.
Yep, absolutely.
But we're going to get into today's topic. We have one we've talked about for a while, but now we have the time to do it.
I'm excited for this one.
I am too. This is going to be fun. This is going to be something different. It's not going to be, it's all MAC related, obviously, but it's not going to be focused on one individual sport, one individual athlete, one school, anything like that. Today, what we're doing is our Mount Rushmore of MAC athletes. So I believe what we did was here, we took one from football, basketball, and baseball. That's our three.
Mm-hmm.
And then our fourth is our wild card. So it's probably from our alma mater. That's what I did anyway.
Okay. See, I did not go the route of my alma mater. So we definitely don't have the same Mount Rushmores.
We definitely don't. We definitely don't.
Although I will say I had a second place guy for my alma mater pick for my wild card.
Yeah.
The person I picked was represented the conference. I think people just knew the conference because of this person. So.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, mine on that level was somebody who went to Ball State, but is kind of forgotten about when talking about guys who made it to the next level. So I'm excited about that. But you go through the list of guys who played this conference, both from the top all the way down to the bottom. I mean, there are some stellar names. There's Hall of Famers. There's guys that you forgot. Their school's not even in the MAC conference anymore, and yet they were MAC athletes. Yep. And you forget about some of those guys. We've talked about it on the show with Coach Lester. We talked about Chad Pennington for a while. He hated Chad Pennington, but we forget that Marshall was in the MAC at that time, and Chad went on to win a lot of games in the NFL, a lot of games at Marshall. Now his son, I believe, is going to be a freshman at Marshall this year as a quarterback. He looks identical to him. Yeah. And I think Chad's a high school coach, I believe, or something like that. So, yeah, it's really interesting when you get in the grand scheme of things, the Hall of Famers from the 60s and 70s all the way to today, the guys who came out of the conference. Those guys who played those early years didn't have MACtion. They weren't playing on Tuesday nights and Wednesday nights and on a random Tuesday, Wednesday night in October and November. That wasn't a thing. And so now it'd be fun to talk to those guys. We talked to Coach Kirshner a little bit about it. Which congratulations to him. He just took a new position at Culver Military Academy coaching over there. Excited for him. It's a fantastic opportunity for him to help coach a great program at a school you never are familiar with. But yeah, he talked about playing on Tuesday, Wednesday nights. He didn't have that opportunity, but he looked back. He goes, that'd be kind of fun being the only game on TV at that time. Yeah. And they talked a little bit about it in depth. And Coach Lester talked about how hard it is to prepare for those games. And he goes, I believe his words were, it's rough. Mm-hmm. And so, and I get that. And it's fans, it's spectators, it's college students who went to games on Tuesdays nights and Wednesday nights like we did. It was always a blast. It was always worth it. There's nothing better than a random tailgate on a Tuesday or Wednesday night for no reason, and had to wake up and go to class the next day. So it was a blast.
So let's break down the rules on how we did this. Obviously, we both got 4 picks. I don't know what you picked. You don't know what I picked.
Correct.
When we went football, basketball, baseball, I think you said a wild card. And so I know that we kind of let this up for interpretation. I went the route of looking at what they've done in their pro career as well as what they did in their MAC career.
Yep, so did I.
Okay. So
Yep.
so it sounds like we've got a similar vein there.
Yeah.
So why don't you lead us off on this one and
Yeah.
give us your football.
Sure. My football
representative.
one here, it's probably pretty common knowledge of this individual, but we heard stories of guys playing against this individual, and I went Jason Taylor.
Okay.
Just because of our conversation with Coach Lester and Coach Kirshner, how they get to play against him. And they just said he was a man amongst boys. He was a menace on the defensive line. I think he played tight end in that game and had to chip in and block him a few times. But Coach Lester said he just sacked him a few. He was sacked by him a few times.
Had to run away from him.
He had to run away, yeah. And they said he was just as good as advertised playing against him. At Akron, he was a 4-year letter winner and a 3-year starter. He recorded 279 tackles, 21 sacks, 7 forced fumbles, and 3 interceptions in his college career. He was a two-time first-team All-Mid-American Conference selection as a junior and a senior, as well as an All-American pick his junior year. And I didn't know this either, but he played basketball at Akron.
I didn't know that either. Okay.
Now I read it. I didn't do a whole bunch of research into it, but it sounds cool. And so he was also became the 3rd person ever inducted into the Akron Ring of Honor. Moving on to his professional career in '97, he was picked in the 3rd round, where he actually played high school ball in Pittsburgh. So the Akron gets a lot of kids out of Pittsburgh.
Yes.
In that Pennsylvania area, not being too far away. That's what Coach Moore had. I believe he's from the Pittsburgh area too. And so he probably has a great relationship with all those Pittsburgh schools, which would be great for him up there. As I mentioned, he was a 3rd-round pick out of Akron, played 15 seasons in the NFL with Miami, Washington, and the Jets. I believe he did 2 or 3 different stints with Miami. In the NFL, he registered 775 tackles, 139.5 sacks, 8 interceptions, 46 forced fumbles, 29 fumble recoveries, and 9 touchdowns. Defensive Player of the Year in 2006, and his 2-time AFC Defensive Player of the Year. The 2007 Walter Payton Man of the Year. He was a 3-time first-team All-Pro, a 6-time Pro Bowler, the 2000s All-Decade Team. He was also runner-up on Dancing with the Stars in season 6.
Yes, he was.
Now, this is a fun fact I didn't know. Joy Taylor from The Herd.
Yeah.
That's his sister.
No way.
I did not know that.
Clearly, I didn't either. That's
until
really
I read
cool.
this. Yes, and so she's on the Herd with Colin Cowherd, is like his PA, I guess, or announcer, I guess you can say. She's made a name for herself in sports media as well. But yeah, Joy Taylor from The Herd is his sister. Had no idea.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is. But yeah, like I said, I want Jason Taylor on this one. I think I'm not sure to mention he is in the Hall of Fame. That's kind of important too.
A little bit.
You look at his numbers overall: 775 tackles, 139.5 sacks, 8 picks, 46 forced fumbles, and 29 fumble recoveries, 9 touchdowns. As a defensive lineman, those aren't bad numbers at all for a 12 or 13-year career, or 15 years career.
No, not at all.
But then he was on Hard Knocks, the Jets, towards the end of his career. They didn't feature him a whole lot on that. I was kind of surprised. When you look back on that season, they didn't feature him a lot because Rex Ryan was kind of the voice, and he's good for TV. So it was a lot of Rex Ryan, a lot of Mark Sanchez, because Mark was young in his career at that time. They had LaDainian Tomlinson on that team. Santonio Holmes was on that roster.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Mangold was a couple years into his career at that point.
Yep.
So yeah, he was featured on that a little bit. But yeah, I went Jason Taylor at the University of Akron. All
right. No, I respect it. I mean, Jason Taylor, obviously a great pick. I was actually torn between him and the person that I picked, who I'll be mentioning here shortly. But Jason Taylor, I mean, you just look at everything he did for Akron, and I mean, what he did in his NFL career. 2006 NFL player or defensive player of the year?
Yeah, NFL defensive player in 2006. He was a 2-time AFC defensive player of the year. 2007 Walter Payton Man of the Year. 3-time first team All-Pro. 6-time Pro Bowler. 2000s Decade Team. All the numbers, they speak for himself, honestly.
Well, exactly. I'm also going with a defensive player with a little bit more recency bias, and I recognize that, but I'm going to go with Khalil Mack out of Buffalo. Mm-hmm. You as an Ohio State fan remember things that Khalil Mack has done to Ohio State.
I do. Yeah,
he
chased Braxton Miller all over the field that year.
He really did. And I mean, I just look at everything that he did. He's been in the NFL 7 years now, right? 4 with the Raiders and 3 with Chicago. He's now going to be with the Chargers this season. And
which I forgot he was traded. That feels like it happened so long ago.
Yeah, well, yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago. But I mean, this guy has been a 5-time Pro Bowl selection. And I know that Pro Bowls don't mean what they used to, but
Hmm.
still, you've been named to the Pro Bowl 5 times. 3-time first team All Pro pick. He was the 2016 Defensive Player of the Year, so 10 years away, 10 years after Jason Taylor. And he was also named to the NFL's 2010 All Decade team.
Hmm.
Not bad for a guy who played half the decade.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and
Exactly.
then looking at his MAC numbers or his MAC awards and honors, first team All MAC 3 seasons in a row. He was the MAC Defensive Player of the Year senior year. He earned the Jack Lambert Award, ironically named after a fellow MAC alumni,
Yeah, yeah. Against a guy, sure.
given to the nation's top linebacker.
Mhm.
He finished second in the voting for the Butkus. He broke the NCAA record for career forced fumbles at 16.
Hmm.
Tied the NCAA mark for a career's tackle for loss of 75. He's a 3-time MAC East Defensive Player of the Week. He led the Bulls in tackles with 100, tackles for losses with 19. These are all just senior year numbers.
Right, right.
10.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, and 5 forced fumbles. He had 2 pick sixes that year against Ohio State and against UMass.
Hmm.
And
I believe his brother played at Buffalo after him, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about him, and this is something I just randomly found while looking up his stuff, he wore number 46 at Buffalo.
Hmm.
Do you know why?
Why do you wear 46 in Buffalo?
I wouldn't have guessed it.
Was that his ranking him out of high school?
That was his rating in the NCAA football game his freshman year.
No, was it? Okay, I wasn't too far off. There you go. That's interesting.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Huh.
Talk about carrying a chip on your shoulder.
Sure.
I love that.
I never would have guessed that. Yeah.
And obviously drafted in 2014, first round, 5th pick overall.
So who would have been on the cover of that NCAA? Was that Ingram?
That would have been the 2000 and because he redshirted his freshman year in 2009. So that would have been,
Or was it Tebow?
it would have been the 2010 game. So it would have been, it might have been, no, Ingram was 2012. That one was the Texas Tech guy.
Was it Crabtree?
Yeah.
That's right. It was Crabtree. Yeah. Oh, Tebow was 11. That's right. That was Michael Crabtree. Huh.
So, yeah. So Khalil Mack was rated a 46 overall in NCAA 2010.
And there was also an NCAA 2010 basketball game with Blake Griffin on it. I missed that game too.
Yep. And that was the last one that they did that year.
That was a great one.
Well, speaking of basketball, let's flip gears over to our basketball guys.
Yeah, let's go on to basketball here. This is a player. I am a little homer on this one, and I'll admit it. I met this guy a few times, but he's somebody who's the MAC is secretly rich in basketball history.
Oh, 100%.
There is. It's just you have to look, and then you see these guys like, oh, that's right. I forgot about him. I forgot about this guy. And you see Ron Harper out of Miami, who won titles with Jordan in the 90s.
Right.
This one, I could have done Ron Harper, but I wanted to change it up a little bit. No, with Bonzi Wells.
Nice. Okay.
Bonzi Wells out of Ball State.
Wow.
Bonzi is number 42 is retired in Muncie. I met Bonzi a few times during my time there at Ball State. Such a nice guy. But, I mean, this dude had a 10-year career in the NBA, then 2 years overseas. So the guy played a long. He gained some big contracts, too, at one point. But, I mentioned Ron Harper there a second ago. He broke Ron Harper's conference record with 2,377 career points. And he beat that record with a one-handed dunk against NIU.
Wow.
This is a guy who's rarely – I'm sure you hadn't heard that name in a long time since I brought that up.
No.
But he was named to the Mid-American Conference Freshman Player of the Year in 2004-2005 season. Or excuse me, 94-95 season. During that time, he helped Ball State to the NCAA tournament. He also broke Ron Harper's conference record of 2,377 career points. That one-handed dunk against NIU, like I mentioned. Bonzi also led the MAC in steals in 1998 with 73, averaging 3.5 steals in 29 games.
Okay.
The dude was a ball hawk. He was kind of like the free safety or cornerback of the court.
Sure.
He was all wherever the ball was, he was. I also mentioned he has steals here, but he also led the conference in steals during his 4 years at Ball State. He finished his career as he finished his career with 2,485 points and 347 steals during his time in Muncie. Because he's a Muncie kid. went to Muncie
Right.
Central. He still lives in Muncie. But his time in Muncie, he averaged 21 points a game, three rebounds and 3 steals. So he was drafted 11th overall by Detroit in '98, but he never played for Detroit because he was instantly traded to Portland.
Okay.
So he played in Portland from '98 to '03. He played 10 years in the NBA, 2 overseas. He played for Portland, Memphis, Sacramento, Houston, and New Orleans. He played in 591 games, starting 275 of them, played in 48 playoff games, and started in 16 of them. His 2 years overseas, one was in China and one was in Puerto Rico, I believe.
Okay.
But as I mentioned before I got into details, his number is retired in Muncie. And at the Nest, I believe it's number 42, 48, one that I forget. But he's a guy who has a rich history, rich basketball history. And his high school, Muncie Central, is a pretty well-known Central Indiana high school basketball program. At least they used to be. I think their numbers have been down here over the past few years. But nevertheless, his time at Ball State, his time at Muncie in general, as a high school and collegiate athlete, it's huge for the program. It's huge for the school. And you talk to people around the NBA, you talk to people around sports, they know who Bonzi Wells is.
Yep.
And he's a guy who made his. He came out of the MAC and he made himself successful. He got some nice contracts and he made his time. Like I said, 10 years in the league and 2 out. But yeah, I wanted Bonzi Wells for my Mount Rushmore on the basketball side.
So I love the Bonzi Wells take. I really do. And I had looked at him. I'd also looked at our boy Earl Boykins, who, and this isn't my pick, but just a little fun tidbit. He was 5'5" tall.
Yeah.
He was the second shortest player in NBA history out of Eastern Michigan.
On Eastern, yeah. I'm assuming Muggsy was the shortest.
Yeah, only Muggsy, Muggsy Bogues was the shortest.
Jeez.
Now I bring up this one and the alma mater for a specific reason. Grant Long, you think of guys like him as well, also an Eastern Michigan guy.
Yeah. Well, time out. Speaking of that, Eastern Michigan basketball this season
that's what I was going to bring up.
You're going into this? Okay, cool. Go ahead.
This next name I'm going to bring up makes sense as to why Imani Bates chose Eastern Michigan as his next landing spot, because Eastern, I think arguably is probably the most rich in basketball, like talent going to the NBA.
Sure.
They just don't do it at Eastern for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They become these great players in the NBA, and you're going to know the name when I say it. George Gervin.
George Gervin, sure.
Shooting guard for Eastern Michigan from 1970 to 1972. He played for 2 teams, really played for one team in the NBA, but played for his second team for just a season. Played for the Spurs from 76 to 85. Played for the Chicago Bulls from 85 to 86. He had 26 points per game averaged, 4.6 rebounds per game. And he was nicknamed the Iceman.
Iceman, right.
The master of the finger roll and a 4-time scoring champion.
Yep.
He was a 9-time NBA All-Star and was in the ABA before the Spurs joined the NBA in the 76 merger. He had his number retired by the Spurs and also drew a selection to the NBA's 50th anniversary team in 1996.
Okay.
He is also the only MAC player to ever win an NBA scoring title. And like I mentioned, he won 4 of them during his career. Here is one of my favorite tidbits about him. Prior to Michael Jordan, Gervin had the most scoring titles of any guard in league history.
Huh.
Not bad company to be in when you're mentioned with Michael Jordan.
Right. Yeah, I never would have guessed that. Interesting.
And his very last NBA game came on April 20th, 1986. It was a game against the Boston Celtics in game 2 of the first round of the Eastern Conference playoffs. The Bulls finished 30-52, and that was enough for them to get a playoff bid.
Right, which is hard to think of too.
Gervin recorded an assist and a personal foul in 5 minutes of play. The Bulls would later get swept by the Celtics in that round. That last game was also Jordan's 63-point game.
Really?
against the Celtics.
Huh.
So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So that is
Interesting.
the history of Mr. George Gervin. I mean, this guy was electric, obviously, 9-time NBA All-Star. He was named
Sure.
to his number 24 is retired at Eastern Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
He was named to the anniversary team again for the 75th anniversary team.
Right.
And then what's really, really cool is Eastern Michigan is actually renamed their basketball center to the George Gervin Game Above Center.
George Gervin Game Above Center. Interesting.
So he
Yeah,
he led Eastern Michigan to the college division Final Four back before it was FCS, FBS. This was back when it was University Division and College Division.
Yeah.
So yeah, he quite the career on this guy.
Right. Huh.
Things I never would have ever picked out.
No.
So
Definitely not. Interesting.
So George Gervin, that is my NBA guy.
And that's a name too. I mean, we'd have to talk to our parents about that. They would know more than us. Because I mean, you brought that up. I had to think for a second. Okay, he's a throwback. But yeah, you're right. He was the second shortest guy behind Muggsy. And I mean, he made a career out of it.
George wasn't. That was the other guy.
The other guy, yeah.
Yeah. But Eastern, I was looking at this list. In terms of MAC alumni, Eastern has like 4 or 5 guys that I would easily place in the top 10 of MAC or of Eastern alumni who went on to have great NBA careers.
Sure.
So, I mean, Eastern is a hotbed for basketball. I don't think as much lately, but historically, Eastern's been pretty good.
They are, yeah, historically. And that's great. I mean, and now we talked a little bit about it briefly there for a second. They got the number 1 high school basketball player in the country last year, went to Memphis, and he transferred back to Eastern this year because he's from Ypsilanti.
Yep.
And I saw that, and I had texted it to you, and we're like, we haven't recorded since that happened. But that's one of those things that you all kind of look around at each other. This could be the moment. This could be the opportunity that puts Eastern back on the map when it comes to basketball. Now, is it going to be a one and done type thing? Possibly, but that 1 year, I mean, it could change a lot of things for Eastern. I'm excited for them because with the momentum, bringing in a high profile guy like this, it could bring in more because that whole area of Michigan, Detroit, especially, there's a lot of rich high school basketball talent over that way.
Right.
And so there's only so many places for them to go, and you keep your homegrown talent home, then do it. And this is a great opportunity for Eastern to do so.
Well, and I think, you look at what they have to do and what they try to do collectively, right? I mean, Eastern has been for so long, frankly, the punching bag in basketball at least since we've been, students. But sure. Stan Heath up there at Eastern has to be so happy to get that transfer because it's a culture fit. And we've talked to how many coaches about how important a culture fit is over, I don't care if you're the most talented kid in the world, you got to fit the culture, And so I think clearly Coach Heath felt there was a fit. Imani felt there was a fit. And, this could really, I don't want to say that Eastern is now my early betting favorite, but I think that Eastern definitely will finish in the top half of the conference this year.
Yeah. And, we'll probably see them I think we have a great opportunity to see them in Cleveland here in December.
Yeah.
Playing for a MAC championship there. I don't think that'll be too far out of the realm of possibility.
Not at all.
We talked about the richness of basketball in the conference, but let's move on to another sport here, baseball. And pound for pound, you could put the MAC baseball history up against any other conference in the country. I think that's fair to say. When you look down the list, it was shout out to our friends at the Hustle Belt. They did, I think it was a couple of years ago, I found it online. They did an all MAC all-star team.
Okay.
And the names on this thing are incredible.
Sure.
And a lot of guys I didn't think I forgot about, or they're Hall of Famers. The guys who won World Series. I mean, you look at guys like Thurman Munson from Kent State. He was on there. People forget about. His career was cut short. Unfortunately, Earl Hershiser is a BG guy.
Yep.
That was one thing I forgot about as well. Mike Squares from Western Michigan, Merv Rutman from Ball State at right field.
Wow.
There's a lot of guys on here. They just kind of like, oh yeah. They mentioned Thurman, Charlie Maxwell. Bill Doran out of Miami. So many good guys. You can look at the bullpen right now. You guys like Grant Jackson, Jim Borton, Roger McDowell, Steve Stone. It's cool because it's interesting. Kent State has a few more guys than everybody else, but it's still fairly well balanced around the conference. You have Fitz Peterson out of NIU, who had let's see here, he had a 3.30 ERA throughout his career. So Kent State and Miami have a few guys, but like I said, it's pretty well evened out here. BG, SU, EMU, Miami, CMU, NIU. And I think CMU is going to have a few guys to talk about it this year for the team they had and the talent they had because they made it into the tournament. And so they'll be interesting to follow those, see what guys go on from there. But for my selection here for my Mount Rushmore in baseball, I went Mike Schmidt out of Miami, or he went to OU. He was a Philadelphia Philly for
a long time,
years, probably.
Yeah.
He's played his whole career there, yeah. But he led OU to the College World Series in 1970 and was selected as a shortstop for the 1970 College Baseball All-American team. Throughout his career, he had a batting average of .330 and hit a total of 27 home runs by the time he graduated. He was drafted by the Phillies in the second round, 30th overall, the 1971 draft. He batted a career .267 with 2,234 hits, 548 home runs, and 1,595 RBIs. Let's see here. He had 3 National League MVP awards, 12 All-Star Game appearances, 10 Gold Gloves, an 18-year career. It wasn't 15 years, it was an 18-year career.
Okay.
He was elected to the World Series. He was the World Series MVP in 1980, and he was also a first ballot Hall of Famer in 95 with a 96.5% of the vote.
Wow.
Yeah, and those are guys too. You look back, that Phillies team was just ridiculous in that era too. He and Crucky and that whole. I mean, the stories that I think they did a 30 for 30 on it or something like that. One of those documentaries about those Phillies teams, and they were just play baseball and have fun. And during that 18 years he did play, I mean, those guys balled out and won World Series. He went to All-Star games, MVPs. He batted above 250 his entire career. 548 home runs, 1,500 RBIs, 2,200 hits. I mean, that puts Mike Schmidt up in the elite class of baseball players to ever play the game. The history of the game is over 100 years old. Sure. And that puts him in the top echelon of players. He just so happens to come from the Mid-American Conference.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's a great pick. I think yours blows mine out of the water a little bit. Just because I was doing a little bit of research on my guy, I had a little homer bias, and I did not pick a former Toledo Rocket. However, I did pick Bill Duran, the second baseman, out of Miami back when they were the Miami Redskins, not even the Redhawks. Yeah. That was a name change that came in the 90s, I believe.
Yeah.
But
I think it was like 2000s, wasn't it?
I want to say
I think it was later than that.
I want to say it was like 98 or something. Like it was mid to late 90s. But I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
That aside,
you keep talking. I'll look.
So I picked Bill Duran. He was an All-American in 1979, his last season at Miami, and he had a 12-year career in Major League Baseball, mostly with Houston, obviously. But the homer pick in me came out because he played for Cincinnati.
Sure.
Played 3 seasons for Cincinnati, actually. And he was a World Series champion. Something that he is quoted as saying, though, from that World Series team, the 1990 Cincinnati Reds, was, and this is a fun little bit of history, he had turned down a trade to the New York Mets the day before, so on August 29th of 1990. But on August 30th, he was traded for Terry McGriff, Keith Kaiser, and Butch Henry to go join the Cincinnati Reds.
The Reds, right, yeah.
The Reds won the World Series that year, and he had back surgery the day that Reds clinched the division pennant, and he had to miss the rest of the season. He is quoted as saying, "I didn't feel I belonged. I was just a rented player."
Huh.
Wow. Right.
Interesting thing to say. Yeah.
Right. And just, it just makes you think like, man, that sucks for the guy. He played 1,453 baseball games. His last season of baseball, he played 28 games with Milwaukee. Not too many stats to really write home about for him there, but he had a career 266 batting average. His on-base percentage was 354. His slugging percentage was 373. I mean, he only had something like 94 home runs total. But I mean, this is a guy who he was gritty, or 84 home runs. Sorry. He had almost 500 ribbies. And he was just a gritty player.
Sure.
He would come out. I mean, he could get hurt, he'd bounce back up and keep playing. And he would just go out and he would fight. He would really make a name for himself. His career, I think, was probably cut short because of injuries. He had to have rotator cuff surgery after the 1987 season. He lost an arbitration case with the Astros to get a raise to $550,000.
Wow. That's like not even half of a signing bonus anymore.
No. It just blows your mind to think about how 38 years ago or 35 years ago, how little baseball players were making.
Sure. Yeah.
And still to us, we're like, yo, that's so much money.
Right. Yeah. Here I saw something here in 1986. He had a career best 42, stole 42 bases.
Yep.
And he averaged 266. Yeah. I mean, you give him healthy. He's got another, he played 12 years. If you give him healthy,
probably another 6.
Another 6 or 7. Yeah. That's what I was going to say at least. And he was arguably the best player for Houston, I'd imagine, that during a time there.
Oh, the Houston loved him. I mean, I'm sure. And I've just looked up different things on his name, but people in Houston loved him.
Yeah.
So
yeah, was going to think because he was on that list from the Hustle Belt of players. And he was one of the guys who I looked at too. And you go, oh, yeah, Miami has some.
Miami's got some good baseball.
They do. They really do. And historically, they've been one of those programs that puts out a couple of guys every year.
And what's interesting is, so he obviously played, baseball for the Astros, the Reds, and the Brewers. He was a bench coach for Kansas City from 2005 to 2007, and then posted a 4-6 record for the Royals interim manager position to close the 2006 season. He then rejoined the Reds in 2007 as a minor league infielding base running coordinator. And then he was moved into a role of a special assistant to the GM player performance role for the Reds in the 2019 season.
So he was like the Dwight Schrute for the Reds.
Basically, the assistant too.
He was the assistant to the regional manager.
But he's from Cincinnati as well. So I mean, that's got to be every kid's dream, is to get to play for your hometown team, And
that's one thing I've noticed here too. And you look at some of these guys, like Mike Schmidt, for example, like he's from Dayton. It's obviously not too far from Athens.
Right.
And Jason Taylor, well, Bonzi Wells, being a Muncie kid, grew up just 5 minutes away, if that, from Ball State. Yeah, Jason Taylor, Pittsburgh, not that far from Akron. So these guys, I think, grow up around these programs and they know, hey, and I think players now are starting to realize, especially with the transfer portal, is I can go to these schools, I can get national notoriety, and I can play. I'm not going to be riding the pine for 4 years, 3 years, or whatever, if I'm redshirted or not. And like Jason Taylor, he could probably play at any school in the country, but he goes, hey, I can go to Akron, I can play, I can start for 3 years, I can get my notoriety, I can beat Mike Kirshner off the line and run down Tim Lester, which he did, and he can be drafted in the third round. He can play basketball and then get drafted and then go into the Hall of Fame and have a stat sheet a mile long. He has a stat sheet that most guys dream about, and he's an Akron kid, or played at Akron. He's a MAC kid, and we could do 20 Mount Rushmores on players. We missed the Randy Mosses of the world.
We could do a football one. We could do a basketball one. We could
we could even do one probably on schools that aren't even in the conference anymore.
Yeah.
The Marshalls, the Cincinnati's, things like that. I know I'm missing other schools, but nevertheless, there's so much good talent that goes unlocked in this conference. And I think if MACtion were a thing in the late 80s, early 90s, there'd be a lot more of these guys, more notable guys. And you look at baseball too, these guys had to grind it out through the minor leagues. Alex Call, Ball State guy, just got called up from the Guardians yesterday. And then, he was for the White Sox for a hot minute and then traded to Cleveland this past season. And he was called up yesterday. He got his first start this morning, actually, the first game. He had to play in doubleheaders, so he had the first game today.
Mhm.
So just great to see these guys. And we go on to our last one here, our wild card. I went homer on this one just because this is a credible player. But I went Blaine Bishop.
Okay.
He was a free safety for Ball State. He earned all Mid-American Conference second team choice in '92 and as a senior, and as a sophomore second team, sophomore, first team as a senior. He was named a captain his senior year. He made 243 total tackles, 13 pass breakups, 15 tackles for loss, 12 sacks, 1 pick, and 1 blocked kick. Going into his senior year, he was rated the 17th best defensive back in the country by a professional scouting service. So that's like, I guess, the 24/7 sports of that era, I'd imagine, or scouting, scout.com, more of that is anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But to think that was a thing in the early 90s, that there were scouts, there was books on players and rating them. That's just kind of strange. Nevertheless, because it's everything now. You look at, guys in high school now, they have 5-star recruits, and these kids are scouted and recruited and rated freshman year of high school all the way through till they end up in college, which I found really interesting. But he was drafted in this one, drafted 8 rounds. I think he had 12 at that point. He was drafted in the 8th round. In the '93 draft for the Houston Oilers. He played there from '93 to '02. And they became Tennessee Titans. He was a part of the Titans as well. He was a second team All-Pro in 2000, a 4-time Pro Bowler, first team All-Conference in '95, second team All-Conference '96. These are his NFL stats: 728 total tackles, 15.5 sacks, 13 forced fumbles, 11 fumble recoveries, 5 picks, 1 touchdown. Named one of the NFL's top 100 players by Sporting News report in '98, and he was inducted into the Ball State Athletic Hall of Fame in 2003. I know he does some media down in Tennessee around I think he's in the Tennessee Titans Ring of Honor as well. I think that happened a couple of years ago. But yeah, I think he does radio down there for the Titans or something like that. But he's a guy who was, again, very overlooked, very underrated as a player. Came out of the MAC, and he made himself a 10-year career with a couple of Pro Bowls. And yeah, I think he played 8 years, from '93 to 2002, yeah. So 9 years. And I mean, he has again, like Jason Taylor, he has numbers that people wish had. And again, he's a MAC guy.
I love it. I love seeing these MAC guys go out and do these big things. So, obviously football being the headlining sport, the sport that everybody knows and is most familiar with, but you love seeing what these guys go out and do, and they, give themselves 10, 12, 15-year careers doing something that they love. My pick, definitely not a homer pick, but a pick that makes sense. And this is a guy who transferred 3 times he was at 3 different schools prior to his last stop in the Mid-American Conference. And that one seemed to work out the best for him. And I'm talking about one Antonio Gates.
Antonio Gates, sure.
You're going to love this. This is a lot of fun history. So he started his college career at Michigan State.
Yep.
Playing basketball. And he wanted to play football under Nick Saban,
right,
as well as basketball under Tom Izzo.
Is that right? It's hard to believe Izzo's been there that long.
Yeah, this is in 2002, or no, this is in 2000.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or 1999, whatever.
Going to 2000, yeah.
But Nick Saban said, no, you're going to play football, and you're only going to play football. So he then transferred to Eastern Michigan, and then played a part season before transferring to a junior college in California called the College of the Sequoias. And then he was recruited by current Eastern Michigan head coach Stan Heath to go play at Kent State.
Right.
And he played 2 seasons as a power forward. His junior season, he averaged 16 points, 8.1 rebounds, and 2.7 assists per game. They won their first regular season MAC championship after finishing 24-5, 17-1 in conference play. They also won their second consecutive MAC tournament and earned the 2002 NCAA tournament bid.
Right.
In this tournament, they went on to defeat They were a 10 seed. They went on to beat Oklahoma State,
Yeah.
number 2 Alabama, and number 3 Pittsburgh before falling in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I remember that.
During his senior season, he was an All-American, averaged 20 points a game, and his basketball jersey number is currently hanging in the rafters at Kent State. Professional scouts for the NBA didn't want him.
Right.
He said he was basically not big enough.
Sure.
Which at 6'4", you're not
6'4"
big enough.
is tiny now.
Yeah. So professional scouts did not want him. So he said, all right, I'm going to go play professional football. And he arranged a workout in front of a bunch of scouts.
Mm-hmm.
As many as 19 teams contacted him saying, hey, come work out for us. Come work out for us. And then the Chargers signed him as an undrafted free agent.
Yeah. And he made a 18-year career at tight end?
He made a 16-year career at tight end where he led the league for his position 1, 2, 3, 5 times on touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually owned the NFL record for tight ends.
Tight ends, yeah.
With touchdowns with 116. Gronk had a chance to break that, but Gronk is retiring. So
right.
And then he had 3 seasons where he led the league in yards for tight ends, a couple 1,000-yard seasons. He has 1,200 receiving yards in his career. He only had 8 fumbles and lost 6 of them. So that's obviously never a good mark, but
no,
not bad for, a 16-year career.
Right. And during his time too, we had great competition when it came to tight ends because he and Tony Gonzalez was another basketball guy out of Cal.
Yep.
They were a very similar build. I think Tony was probably a little bit bigger, but nevertheless, they were the guys had the same background essentially.
Well, yeah, exactly.
They both made Hall of Fame careers.
Big, huge Hall of Fame careers. And
because Gates isn't in the Hall yet, is he?
Not yet. Because he just retired 4 years ago.
Okay, so he'll be eligible next year.
Yeah. So he retired, or he officially retired and announced his retirement on January 14th, 2020.
Oh, so he's got a couple more, about 3 more years.
Yeah. Okay. So at the time during his career, he had 89 touchdown receptions thrown by one quarterback, Phillip Rivers. And it was the most ever by a quarterback tight end duo at the time.
Right.
Obviously, Brady and Gronk broke that, but he is now a front office league Legends ambassador for the Chargers. Okay. And I mean, this guy just screams, whenever I think of the MAC, I think of guys like this. He's a 3-time first team All-Pro, 2-time second team All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowl selection, NFL 2000s All-Decade team, Chargers 50th anniversary team, and then obviously his basketball numbers retired. But to just go from just playing mid-major level basketball to say, I want to go play in the NFL. I mean, Kent State is a hotbed for NFL talent. We've talked about hotbeds for different kinds of talent in other sports, but you look at the history of Kent State, Josh Cribbs, Julian Edelman, Antonio Gates. I mean, those are guys just jump off the page immediately in NFL history. Jack Lambert, Nick Saban went on to have great careers. Gary Pinkel was Nick Saban and Jack Lambert's teammate, and he went on to have great coaching careers.
I think Lou Holtz is a Kent State guy.
Lou Holtz is a Kent State guy. So, I mean, you just look at all these guys who have gone on to be legends, and they all come from the MAC.
They do.
And I love it.
They do. And it's something great. It's something we're excited to get into. Hopefully now with Media Day coming up, we'll be able to a little more access to some guys and being able to talk to some more guys because I know we have a few on our list. We might be calling some favors in here to get these guys on the show. Absolutely. But hey, let's run back down our list here. Let's go. Tell me your Mount Rushmore again.
All right. So my Mount Rushmore, pulling it back up here. So I went football, Khalil Mack out of Buffalo. We had basketball, George Gervin out of EMU, a.k.a. the Iceman. Baseball, Bill Duran out of Miami. And then my at-large and wild card was Antonio Gates out of Kent State, the basketball player turned NFL superstar.
Right. And I went from another basketball player / football player at Akron, Jason Taylor from Akron, and Bonzi Wells, Ball State. Mike Schmidt was out of OU. and then Blaine Bishop out of Ball State as well. I'm not trying to be homer with Ball State guys. These are just guys who aren't talked about, and people forget. Bonzi was a stud in the league, and Blaine Bishop had a long career, played with Eddie George and that whole era. He had to have been on the yeah, he probably would have been on the best show against St. Louis. He probably would have been on the Super Bowl, right? That was early 2000s.
Maybe
I forget. The Greatest Show on Turf versus the Titan. I think it was like Jeff Fisher's like the first or second year in Tennessee, I think.
What year was that for him?
I'm trying to think who was even on that team.
Well, what year did he get in the league?
Oh, he got in the league we played from 93 to 02. So it might have been like 03, maybe like the Greatest Show on Turf.
No, that would have been 99, I think.
Well, 99?
Gonna look that up real quick. Tennessee Titans, because that was their Super Bowl team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking Blaine Bishop.
Yeah.
Number 23.
Mm-hmm.
Looking
Who's on that roster? Okay.
He's on that 1999 roster.
Is he? Okay.
Included Eddie George, Steve McNair, Kevin Dyson, Frank Wycheck, and Brad Hopkins.
God, so good.
What a great team.
So good.
Steve McNair out of Alcorn State.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's he was on that Super Bowl team.
That was a hell of a team too, like you mentioned, those guys on both sides of the ball too. Kurt Warner, Marshall Falk, Horn. Oh yeah, those guys, Isaac Bruce. Those are some names.
Oh yeah.
So this was fun. Something different. Something kind of not just one sport related. We get to talk about guys that we don't usually get to talk about in sports. We don't really get to talk about. We don't do a whole lot. We do a little bit with baseball, do a little bit with basketball, a little more with basketball than we do baseball, but nevertheless, it was fun to talk about these guys and some programs we don't get to talk a lot about. OU, for example, hopefully we'll be talking more about them here. In the coming weeks, we have Media Day, like mentioned here, in 2 weeks in Cleveland. What is that, the 26th? That Tuesday?
Yep. That'll be a lot of fun.
For that. That'll be a lot of fun. Yeah. Now that we know what we're doing, it'll be a good time.
So, well, cool. Well, hey man, I had a lot of fun doing this. This is a fun little research project to get us back in the studio, to get us back to doing stuff. And I'm excited to hear what people think. Guys, feel free to, scream at us, tell us why we're wrong or why we're right, and who you would have included on the Mount Rushmore. We want to hear your thoughts, your opinions. We had a few people chirping at us on that earlier on who they would include and why they would include them. So we'd love to hear your guys' arguments for or against players that we picked.
Sure. I think we're gonna make a graphics with Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I'm gonna make
both of us. We'll tweet those out. We'll have some fun with it. But in the meantime, make sure you guys follow our social medias. We'll be a little more active on that now that we have something to talk about. But yeah, on Twitter, the College Sports Pod, at the College Sports Pod, same on Instagram, website, the CSC podcast. And then we'll be, like I mentioned, we'll be talking to coaches and players here in a couple of weeks. So if you have any questions for any coaches or players, send them our way. We'll do our best to get them answered by a coach or a player or the commissioner or somebody from ESPN. Who knows who we'll be talking to? I mean, I have no idea who we're talking to. We'll figure it out once we get there.
We'll figure it out once we arrive.
Kind of what we did last year, and it worked out well for us. So we'll do it again.
So, well, cool. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Be on the lookout for more consistent recording for us as we get back into football season. Get ready for some MACtion. Get ready for football kickoff and everything. I'm going down to Ball State at Tennessee, followed up with Miami at Kentucky. And then in week 3, AJ and I will be at Toledo versus Ohio State and possibly Western Michigan at Pitt, right?
That's the same
at
day.
Western Michigan, right?
That's that same day.
Right. So we got to look at it all, but we'll figure it out.
I think I'll do Ball State and Western. That's at Ball State.
Yep.
I believe that's the week after Ohio State. Toledo.
I believe that's week 4. Yeah.
Week 4. It's a 2:00 kickoff, so that'll be perfect. So maybe we'll go down for that. We'll talk to Coach Lester, Coach New, and get down there for a nice sunny early season game, because my brother and I did a MACtion game last year at Ball State Central, and it poured down rain. So luckily we were in the press box while the 20 people in the stands got wet. So it worked out well. So cool. Yeah, we've got a lot of it on our schedule, and we now that we know what we're doing in year 3, we'll be able to execute a little bit more.
It'll be a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. and we'll come to you. Well, if not this next week, we'll see you here in a couple weeks. And in the meantime, keep checking us out on social media, and we'll see you guys next time.